So I'm just going to tell you a bit about WUN. How many people have been to a WUN event before? Oh, good. Yeah, no, that's quite a lot. And you come back again, that's really good. and welcome to those who haven't been. Hopefully this will be the first of many. I'm just going to run through a bit about what we're doing and who we are, and then we'll get on to the panel conversation. So these are our partners. So if your company isn't on there, please go back and ask why not. But really, we're hugely grateful because it's the funding of the partners that enable us to do everything we do. And if we can go on. Oh, that's me. We can move on quickly. So, WUN, for those who don't know us, it started with 5 grumpy women sat round a board table or a lunch table, actually. And we'd all got to reasonably senior roles in the sector. And we just went, we've got to do something. The numbers are woeful. And that was about 8 years ago. And we're now extraordinary. And this slide makes me laugh because it keeps changing. But we're now over 11,500 members and we've got over 80 partners. Amazingly, the mentoring program, we've got over 500 live mentees at the moment and over 200 mentors. So it's a real movement and tribe. And I'm loving the conversations this evening, actually reconnecting and making connections and seeing people's careers develop. So hopefully we're doing something right and we'll keep doing it. WUN events coming up. There are many, so it's quite hard to keep track of them all. But these are just the next couple of months. We're big at Utility Week. We're on panels, we've got networking events, we've got an I Am Remarkable workshop, and then there's another one which is online on the 9th of June. If people don't know about the I Am Remarkable workshop and you haven't done one, please do go and find out about it. It's a brilliant hour and a half workshop, which is all about how you come out going, I am remarkable. And actually, it's incredibly powerful and very easy to access. They are quite quickly sold out, so please do sign up. But if you haven't done one, please do. Then our sort of developing series of WUN for Wellbeing, pension awareness, really important, particularly as you get older. But it's actually really important right the way through your career. So please do sign up for that. And then I know, having spoken to people already this evening, there's lots of people coming to the Women's Utility Awards. There's lots of people in the room who have either been a finalist, won awards, or are finalists this year, which is fantastic to see. And the more we do that to celebrate, the better. It really does have immense power. And it's the most fantastic lunch ever. And then we've got a programme of events all the way through the year, but those are the ones for the next couple of months. You go on, please. I mentioned mentoring. I'm actually delighted because Monica's here. And Jane is here too, actually. So we've got two case studies up here. But the mentoring program is incredibly powerful, and it is for you. And it's for you to access other people outside your organisation who can give you a different perspective and really help. With whatever you want to talk to them about. So that typically lasts about 6 months. Try and focus on something that's a sort of something to develop you. Quite often it might be, I've had lots of them, but sometimes it's about changing career. It's actually, I've got stuck, how do I move? Sometimes it's about confidence, imposter syndrome, all those things. You can talk about anything, and actually your mentor will really help you. I'll probably give you some homework too, which is my style. But it's a massively powerful programme. So again, if you're not involved, either as a mentor or as a mentee, please do get involved. Or both, exactly. The podcasts, I can't remember how many, we are up to about 80 podcasts. Again, they're on Spotify, Amazon Music, whatever. They are just a brilliant resource. It's one of those things that I dip into occasionally and just listen to the odd podcast. And every time I come away going, God, that's so inspiring. They are just inspiring stories. Mostly women, not all women, but mostly women. And they're talking about all sorts of, mostly their careers and how they've got to places, really demonstrating sort of vulnerability, humanity, all the rest of it, but still done amazing things. So it's really worth listening. You know, if you're on the train or whatever, plug into one of those because you'll feel better for it. And if you want to be on a podcast, let us know as well, because we're always interested in interesting people. So a real resource there. Development programme, I'm delighted that the next cohort of, well, the latest cohort of Thrive, some of them are here tonight because actually the next Thrive course is tomorrow and for the next 2 days. We've got Arrive, Drive, Thrive and Strive. Drive and Thrive are the two that are, it was a really good idea to name them that at the time. We really struggle now. But particularly Drive and Thrive are really flourishing, and we're getting more and more cohorts through. And what it is, they were designed by women in this room for women. And so it's very much about personal development and growth and sort of some aspects of traditional development, but people who understand the sector, people who understand what it's like to be a woman in the sector. And so it's really targeted. And really, one of our ambitions with this was you end up with a fantastic bunch of friends and colleagues across the sector who you'll be lifelong connections and network with. So it's a really, really valuable training program. We're incredibly proud of it. I'm incredibly proud of the people in the room who can put your hands up. Come on, trainers. Sarah, yeah. And the cohort, yeah. No. Put your hand up, Emmy. It's fantastic. So, again, if you're not involved, please do go and have a look at it. It's a resource for you to get involved with. And there is also, but if your company is relatively small and you don't have, training budgets, we have got some bursary places as well that we offer. The best practice toolkit, that is the worst picture ever of me. I hate it, but let's ignore that. It's not about me. So the best practice toolkit, again, we're incredibly proud of. We've pulled this together for our partners, and it's all about case studies, evidence, points of reference, what does good look like in the workplace. And that's available for our partners and to be used by our partners and reference. And we'll continue to build that and keep it up to date. But it's an incredibly useful resource. And I mean, Karen's got some examples here. But actually, it was when we pulled it all together and we went, my God, this is brilliant. It's really, really powerful. And it shows what good looks like in organisations. So please, again, point out to your partners, or if your partners, please get engaged with the toolkit because it's a massively useful resource. And then last one, if you're not a member of the network, please join it. All you have to do is go onto the website and sign up. We intentionally, at the beginning, made this free for women. So it's a resource for you to help you. It's all about how we get more women through the sector, up the sector, and really developing their careers. So if you've got feedback, if you want things that we're not doing, come and talk to us as well. Lovely to see you all. I'm now going to invite my fantastic panel onto the stage. Please come and join me, and we will get going with the meat of the evening. Pick a chair, any chair. Something like that. Might not. Do I need this mic or am I? I do need this mic. Yes, right. I'm delighted to welcome a fantastic panel. I'm going to say your names and then I'm going to get you to introduce yourself. So Nicola, Tanya, Fiona and Paula. And I'm going to let you introduce yourselves. What we've sort of said, we've got a real mix of experiences and pathways here, and I'm going to let you explain what they are. So in different stages of careers, different directions and different approaches. So we're going to dive into some of the detail, but just to get us going, could you just give us a sort of, where did you start from? Where are you now? And anything that changed in the middle? Nicola.
Okay. So where I started as a trainee. Oh, beg your pardon. Sorry, I started badly. That's my start. I started as a trainee accountant many years ago. I am currently head of platform partnerships at LNG, and my career has taken a variety of, let's call it sort of zigzags. I would describe one moment of change is when I decided, after much rumination and sort of, I think it was like 2007, 2008, that I was going to change career tack. I was in investor relations at LNG, actually. Clean energy, renewable energy investing advisory with EY, and that was quite a change of tack, and brought about a whole different shape of career as a result. Good to see everyone.
Hello, everybody. I started out, I'm half Italian, half English, but after university I found myself doing an internship in Germany and then joined a finance graduate program at AG House Appliances. And today I'm a very happy NED portfolio director. And in between, I had a fantastic career at Siemens as a finance director across different sectors and countries. We'll probably talk a little more about that later. But I was a bit of a workaholic. So 10 years ago, I decided that I was part of the problem and, and had to get myself away from the temptation to work too much. I love my job at Siemens, and I knew changing company wouldn't, give me the answer I was looking for. But I'd started doing a couple of NED roles. And so 10 years ago, I left Siemens and I started on this NED adventure. It hasn't been easy. It's been a high mountain to climb. We can talk a little about that later. So great to be here.
So I started in the city in 1987 on a graduate training program, and I started in the Asian market. So I first became a Japanese fund manager and then Hong Kong and Australian fund manager. And I was running pension funds and unit trusts. It was absolutely fantastic because the Asian markets were going gangbusters in the 1990s. So that I lucked out in the sector I chose. I was lucky enough to be in the boardroom from a young age because of investing in investment trusts, pension funds. So I was always presenting to boards. I have to admit, I never noticed the lack of diversity or women in the board, on the board, and it wasn't until the government, Lord Davis, was tasked to look at the lack of diversity on FTSE 100 boards. I couldn't believe that I hadn't noticed, and it just so happened that I was an angel investor myself, and I realised that I was the only female angel investor in the room, and then I found out so little capital goes to females. It was only 4% at the time. It's doubled. It's nearly 8% now, but it's still tiny. And I thought I need to get out of my bed and do something about it. So I launched Women on Boards in 2012, which was a network to advertise board roles for free and hold people's hands to join boards. You're never too young to be on a board. There's a board role out there for all of you, tiny community boards, all the way up to these big listed boards that we've heard about. And it's a free MBA in leadership development if you choose the right board, because there's some shockers out there. I now work for Newroll, the largest non-exec only headhunter in the UK, but I primarily work with corporates, going into corporates, supporting executives, understand the boardroom better, but also I like them to give us their younger employees and engage them about boards. Thank you.
I'm Paolo. I'm full Italian. So I started my career as a software engineer many years ago in Rome. And since then, I went on a journey across 5 countries in Europe and Asia, took many executive roles. And in 2018, I quit my executive career, and for several years I've been on a portfolio career. And then last September, by chance, I decided to jump again into an executive role. So I'm here as the CRO of Gentrack, still holding some non-exec roles, but jump back on the executive side.
Thank you. So you can see we're well diversified in terms of routes and portfolios now. I'm going to start with Fiona. You just said anybody can be a non-exec, and everybody out here is going, oh, really? Because equally, Tanya said it's really quite hard. So can we explore that a bit?
I think when, talk about, what does a board do? If you think about your local school board or your tiny local sports club or charity, most of those organisations are charitable organisations, and they have to have trustees. And if you're involved in those, most of their trustees are, club members, somebody in the community. And if you care about that organisation, even if it's your local tennis club, somebody's got to recruit the executive team all manage the very nice people who are the members. They've got to finance it, market it, they've got to think about health and safety. Somebody's got to do it. And that's what I mean, there's a role for everyone. You know, one of the youngest members that we helped, you know, she was 19 and she joined the main Girl Guiding Board. You know, she was a girl guider. And they wanted to have youth representatives on their board. The Football Association, the FA, all the way up to the main FA board, all the county FA boards, they insist that the youth councils, and one of those youth members sits on the main board. So there are all sorts of organisations out there. You know them. You just haven't thought about them. We're not all talking about those FTSE listed boards. Clearly, if you're on those boards, it's slightly different. But you tend to find that those people who've had board experience at some stage in their life, they're 44% more likely to be promoted. They're much more likely to make the C-suite. That's if you want to do it. But you create options and choices. So, you know, there is a board role out there for you. Go home tonight, look at every organisation, your local library, your little arts club, your theatre club, and think, who is governing that? That's my money, that's my society. And it's the same with public bodies as well. That's taxpayers' money, that's your money. And you can join the HMRC board if you so fancy it. You just won't get invited to a dinner party ever again, just saying.
Yes, that's the hardest thing, filling that role, isn't it? And Nicola, I mean, you sit on boards with a slightly different perspective because you're sitting there as the investor. Can you talk a bit more about your role and how you've got to that sort of place?
Yeah, so head of platform partnerships LNG, I look after a portfolio of companies through my employed role at LNG. These are companies that LNG has invested into, and as part of the terms of that investment, they will look to appoint a board member or an observer to the board. And so I am a NED on a portfolio of companies, and I've worked with sort of a variety of companies, really, from sort of Series A, early stage companies, right through to scaled companies, manufacturing companies, and, you know, asset managers as well. So a broad range, really. And if I were to say, I think that has been really interesting, actually, the variety of companies that I've worked with. It's not, I found the variety very helpful. You can see parallels between businesses. You can see even between, you know, early stage companies and the scale companies, or when you're thinking about scaling a small company, you can take lessons from one to the other. And I think that's been invaluable, really, all about building the knowledge base through that variety in whichever way that it comes. I would also say another helpful part of my role was that I started off observing on boards. So that is a different role again. So you can be a non-executive director or an observer, and does exactly that. So you observe the functioning of the board and the mechanics of the board and the discussion and what goes on, without the fiduciary responsibilities. You don't have the fiduciary responsibilities of the director. And so I think that was a very useful way for me to learn about how that functions.
Thank you. And I think that's a really, the bit about pulling threads across boards, I think, is really interesting. Tanya, you went to do a NED role to stop working so hard. How did that work out? Can you tell us about your sort of journey into the NED space and where you are today?
Yeah, it wasn't easy initially. I'd started with a couple of NED roles when I was still at Siemens. Siemens had several joint ventures with external partners, and for example, we had a large offshore wind farm, and we had a joint venture with RWE, the utility, and I was the Siemens representative on that joint venture. Being a finance director at Siemens, at the time, I was responsible for Siemens Energy for UK and Northwest Europe, a 4 billion business across the UK, Scandinavia, Ireland, Holland, Poland. I thought, okay, my natural entry point is as a chair of risk and audit. And I'd find myself very quickly on the long lists. But then when it came to short listing, I wasn't UK qualified. And so I would usually, not get onto that short list. So after 3, 4, 5, 6 months of just banging my head against the wall with this, I said, okay, go for smaller companies, but make sure they're really interesting. And I would say that the start of the journey was quite foggy, trying to work your way through this. But over time, I started identifying stepping stones. And I would say what 1, 2 roles would lead to the third, and then the third and fourth will lead to the fifth. So coming back to what Fiona was saying, for example, one of the organizations I chose to work with was an NGO. Yeah, it was the Association of British NGOs Working in International Development. You can imagine I was the only non-CEO of an NGO on the board, so I spent most of my time playing mediator because everybody thought they were right. But it really helped get that experience on the CV. Another role was Thrive Renewables, where today I still sit on the board with Joe, obviously leveraging my Siemens renewable energy experience. And it was then basically the combination of Thrive Renewables and working in international development that got me a role with an organization called the Private Infrastructure Investment Group, investing in first-of-a-kind infrastructure in the poorest countries of Africa and Asia. Today, I also sit on the board of the UK National Wealth Fund, and I'm pretty damn sure it was my experience on the Private Infrastructure Development Group, totally different economic and geographical context, but in terms of the products, equity, guarantees, and loans, very much the same. So, I started carving out this path for myself, where one NED would then slowly lead to the others. And the big challenge was coming to a point where you could actually live off a portfolio career, because I completely left my executive role. That took about 5 years. I had to go back to Siemens in year 3 and say, can I please have some consulting work? But I'm in a good place now. And coming back to what Nicola was saying, I mean, the space I am in is mainly renewable energy and sustainable infrastructure. Some companies develop it, others finance it. Others, like the Energy Systems Catapult, work in the energy policy space. I'm on the board of a utility. And as Nicola was saying, it is amazing how you can connect the dots across these very different organizations, even in size, but all working in that renewable energy and sustainable infrastructure space. And you often find yourself being able to make connections and accelerate collaborations across those organizations.
It's a brilliant journey. It's worth interrogating Tanya later on. Paola, I'm really interested. You've gone exec, non-exec, back to exec. Talk us through that journey and what made you make those decisions, I suppose, is the...
Well, I think that I got into the non-exec part of my career mostly through my exec experience. I had some board experiences before in my life at Ericsson. And the angle I got to board positions or an exec positions was much about bringing my international experience, helping companies to scale across the board, leadership. So I got involved into non-exec roles with that angle as an independent board member. And I think that over time, I've started to kind of feel a little bit the hitch of not being the one making the change. So by chance, again, as I started my non-exec career, pretty much bumping into it a step at a time, I bumped into an exec role at the right time in life. Kids had left home, and we came back to London, and here we are. Really, honestly, that's been a little bit my path, an exploration path. So
it's interesting the number of panels we've done on WUN, and most people have bumped their way along a journey. And Fiona, you're obviously talking to a lot of the world of NEDs and the world of transition. Can you give us a perspective of what does good look like? What's the routes that people can look at?
I think the most important thing the audience should be aware of is most roles are never advertised. Most roles do not use a headhunter. They can't afford to use a headhunter. So lots of organisations are still doing friends and family. So if you're interested in a local organisation, just reach out to the chief exec or somebody on the board and saying, I love what you do, I'd love to get involved. But just do your homework first and look at who's on the board, and get a sense of, because they probably haven't done a skills audit themselves, and think, what are the skills around the table, what could I offer? And the most important thing, and the thing that most people get wrong to answer your question, is they don't understand how to broker or sell their board value add. They sell themselves as an executive. So unless it's a tiny organisation with no staff, in which case they're expecting you trustees to be staff as well as the organisation, you will sell yourself as a doer, and all you'll do is undermine the executive team. So really understand the role of the board. That's important. And then you need to put a board CV together. And your board CV is different. Your board CV will be your deep technical expertise, which might be you're a project manager. It might be that you run equities. It might be that you're a health and safety expert. There could be many deep technical knowledges that are transferable across sectors. What will actually win you the role is your depth and breadth. Because if they have done a skills audit, everyone coming will be a health and safety expert. So what else? And it's about you understanding the dynamics of the board. And boards just, only do two things. Don't overthink it. Performance, strategy and stargazing, and calling the executives to account. Are you going to be that type of NED? Or is it conformance, and all that means is filing your accounts and abiding by all the laws, including GDPR and health and safety and HR. So understanding which bucket you want to put yourself in, and some of the roles is just to act as a community representative. So it's getting your messaging right, and your messaging is also telling people who are interested in board roles. And one of the things that we can do for this network, because we so admire what you do, is every month we have an Unlocking Your Board Potential Power Hour where we explain the role of the board. You don't need a certificate to sit on a board. Most people are learnt on the job. But you do need to understand a few basics, and we can just take you through a few basics. We've got corporate membership, we go in-house and do all that sort of stuff. But if you can't get it, very, very happy. We do the same session every month. And it just demystifies it, because if you demystify it, you will communicate and you'll sell yourself better. But very, very happy to help. But most people don't package themselves properly and don't know how to do it. And the average person takes 2 years to get their first board role, let alone go portfolio. I'm really pleased you said 5 years, because it is tough. And to get paid roles, that's harder again. And having had not-for-profit roles, you learn about how you really add value in the boardroom, because you've no idea. I was brought on because I was an ex-fund manager. Who knew I was a digital marketing expert? Believe me, I wasn't. I just was relative to that lot. So you just don't know, and you don't really know your style. And by taking on a few small roles and things you care, you will learn your style and you'll better sell yourself onto the board. I've got more where that comes from.
Great. Thank you.
Can I just add something? And I think something I've learned along the way, which is important, you need to find your way in. But when you're in, then you can also develop from there. So I started as a chair of audit and risk, as I said, for a smaller company at the end. Yeah, that allowed me to get another 1 or 2 chair of audit and risk roles. But then I joined Remco as a member, the remuneration committee. And after 3-4 years, I got to become a chair of Remco. And in the meantime, ESG had ratcheted up the priority list, joined again as a member, and today I chair ESG. So, it's about finding your way in, packaging yourself well, as Fiona was saying, but then you can also expand and develop as an NED once you're inside.
Great. And I'm going to come back to you, Tanya, as well, because I know in our pre-discussion You said you were going to speak openly. I remember when I was in my exec career and I looked forward and I went, oh, I'm going to be a NED. That's fantastic because I'll do 2 days a week and then I'll drink coffee and have lunch for the rest of the week. Can you just tell us, is that true?
Partially. So obviously, you have the board dates in the calendar, and the thing there is you have to go to those. So if you're on a Caribbean island and you have an audit and risk committee that day, you're going to have to get dressed and go back in and chair the audit and risk committee. What I wasn't maybe prepared for initially was the important role NEDs play as a sounding board for the executive. And so you can never really plan when, there's a difficult financial moment where then the executive picks up the phone and says, can you please come over and talk to us? We're thinking about a few ideas. We'd really appreciate your steer. Or, as a chair of the nomination committee, you're the one who basically has to find a new CEO if they resign suddenly, or take care of finding new NEDs. So it is quite demanding. It definitely isn't full time. And I'm a big traveler. And if I plan it properly, I definitely do that. Joe knows I always come to the board meetings with a suitcase in my hand. But it is probably more demanding, and you get called in, not always when you expect it, and you just have to drop everything and go.
And I mean, I'd reinforce that in terms of it. It's not for everybody, and I think that's an important piece. I mean, we love doing what we're doing, and it's a huge privilege to do it. But actually, it's not for everybody. So I think it's you've got to think about, actually, do I want that pressure? Because you are the director, you've got fiduciary duties. Nicola, I'm going to ask you to talk about that.
Can I just add something? When we talk about not for everyone, it isn't. But what I would say is we're talking here about somebody who's on a very commercial board. If you talk about your local charity or your club, you're talking 4 committee meetings in the evening, your time, your choice. You also might not like being in the boardroom, and I think you're right there, but it's not all the top level. And a lot of people, when we're talking on panels, it sounds top level, but there are other things.
I totally agree. And actually that experience of volunteering, getting involved, running the rowing club, raising money for whatever, it's a massive attribute of your own growth, I think, isn't it? Nicola, some of the challenges, particularly when you've got this sort of changing role, you are employed, but you're also a director. How do you keep your separate hats?
Yes.
What investor versus director is?
Yeah. So very much, non-executive director, your responsibility is to the company and to promote the benefit of the company, and so the shareholder is a different entity, if you like. It isn't me, and so there are matters that at the board. This is private companies. You'll have reserved matters, which are matters that need to be decided ultimately by the shareholder, and that in my case, and the setup varies by place, but that is a different entity. So I deal with board level matters and not the shareholder reserve matters.
And Fiona, just going back to you, I want to pick up on your point, actually. I'll come back to you, Paola, in just a minute. But just that point around boards don't have to be this sort of senior exec piece. What skills do you need before you put yourself forward onto? So very often in these evenings, we find that confidence and imposter syndrome are something that keep coming, and it's like, I can't do that. And just give us an example of what people can do.
I think that the most important thing is that you have to like what the organisation does. You know, if you're going to rush out home from work and go to a board meeting, you know, I don't know, for your local prison, for example, the prison might be a big thing within the society of where you live. And I say that because I know somebody who was on the board of Pentonville Prison. You know, she had to care about it because boards can be quite boring. Board papers can be really, really boring. And a lot of people think, well, I can't be on a board because it's all for accountants. You know, just think of British cycling. The last thing that British cycling needs is a load of cyclists. It doesn't need a load of accountants either. You know, it needs events management. It needs people who care about diversity within cycling. A few years ago, they didn't have any events for women to attend. So Sport England said, right, we're going to pull the money. Sorry, you're not having it anymore. Lottery funded money, bad luck. You know, get your diversity support sorted out. So many things that you can do. But the most important thing is you care about that organisation. I think that's true at the listed level. If you don't like, you know, what, I don't know, Kingfisher does, or you don't understand FMCG retail, and you haven't got the transferable sector knowledge, which might be AI and digital and change or supply chain. Honestly, it's endless. But the biggest thing is you're a decent common sense person who just scratches their head and says, that doesn't look right to me. Just saying. You can't explain it.
It's
You
amazing
shouldn't be
how
doing it.
common sense
And
works, isn't
all
it?
of you work, some of you work for bigger companies as well. A lot of reference here about subsidiary boards. You mentioned subsidiary boards and things you've been doing. You know, some of these big companies, JP Morgan, BlackRock, we work with them. They have 50 subsidiary boards, and that's in the UK alone. Who's on them? What do they do? And are there independent NEDs? And can you be connected to one of those committees and get your proxy board experience? And that's one thing I think you've done in spades.
Yeah.
So Paola, in terms of the difference between being a NED and being an exec, well, can you pull out some of the sort of the key?
Obviously, I can only talk about my own angle. So I'm the common thread of my career is all around growth and scale. And that's what brought me into my experience has been mostly with startup and scale-ups, also as an investor. So what changes is the perspective, the background is pretty much the same. So I obviously tapped into my experience, living and working pretty much globally for 30 years. And then it's the perspective. One is shareholders based, the other one is more kind of corporate based. If you can swing between these two, I think you can pretty much adjust from my angle in both dimensions. I'm not very much into, let's say, more traditional remuneration committee type of experience. That's not really my cup of tea. I think that each one of us
brilliantly demonstrates that actually you can have a completely different skill set in the space.
We're all coming with our own path, and I think there's success on anybody's journey. So I would struggle to give advice in terms of what you need to be good at choosing what life brings at you and presents you, and make your own choices. So judging what to pick when life presents you with an opportunity, it's more important than following a recipe. I don't think there's a question for how to manage your own career.
I think that's brilliant advice. I'm going to sort of open us to questions, but just before we do, can I ask, with the widest sense, how many people are on a board or trustees or involved today? That's good. That's about half, isn't it? And then how many think they might want to be? That's the other half. Fantastic. I can keep asking questions, but have we got some questions from the floor?
Hi, I'm Haley Thompson from Smartest Energy. I did my job. Hi, I'm Haley from Smartest Energy. I just have a quick question around, you mentioned sort of the meetings come up, obviously you have to carve out time for those, make sure you're present for them. But what also goes into kind of the before and after of meeting attendance, and what should we sort of expect to have to do in that capacity?
Shall I answer that one? I'll answer that one. The honest answer is it depends on the organisation and where your role sits in that organisation. I mean, inevitably, you have to review the papers, you have to understand the papers. Quite often, you might have a pre-session before the board meeting with whoever is presenting the paper just to understand it in more depth. Quite often, there are pre-meetings between non-execs or with the exec to sort of really understand what the objective of the meeting is, because board meetings inevitably are quite tight. There's lots to talk about and not enough time, as always. So it's to be as effective as possible. It's that sort of you coming in knowing what you're trying to achieve. And then I think it's really understanding what the objective of the meeting is, because you can go through a standard agenda, but actually what are you trying to get out of it? What's the sort of 1, 2, 3 big things that you need to get out? And that does differ. As we've already said, it differs over cycles of business, but it also differs from business to business. So part of it is deciding where you want to play, and how involved you want to be in the business or out of the business. You have to remember you are non-exec, and that's quite hard if you've been exec, because actually you want to just get stuck in. And Paolo's gone back because he wants to get stuck in. It's quite, sometimes you just want, oh God, I know what to do here, and you can't do it. You've got to work through the exec team, but it's how you influence as well. So there's quite a lot of background stuff that goes on. Any builds on that? Anything?
No, I think, as you said, the preparation for the board meetings is also very important, to liaise with, the exec responsible for that part of the meeting, and make sure you structure it well, and have a plan, let's say, for the discussion. I mean, obviously then curveballs come in and you need to manage those as well, but I think prep is extremely important. That's where I've seen real difference, for example, at chair level, between a chair that, takes the time, prepares the meeting, and those that wing it. And they tend to become a little unwieldy. And then the other aspect is this sounding board point I made before. Take the NGO space. As we know, development and aid funding has been cut over the last 10 years significantly, and a number of organizations have struggled. And so, it's reassuring for the executives when they have to confront that to, develop ideas as to how they can tackle that and over what time frame, but then to have a couple of board members that can also sort of challenge them, give them some additional ideas. I think it's, I wish sometimes when I was at Siemens that, I'd had somebody like that I could talk to. So it is also that sounding board role, which is very important, I find.
And actually, just because it's come to my mind, I think it's a really important thing as well. If you're working in an organisation, the board is there, not as sort of an invisible piece over here. So it is worth trying to sort of reach out and meet the board and sort of get connections with the board, because their role is to actually take ultimate responsibility for the business. So I think that there's connections there, and doesn't mean you've got to go, regular one-to-ones and things, but just that connection is really important as well, for both ways, so the board can really understand what's happening, but also to help you as well in terms of navigating.
Yeah, just one other thing is that, as well as the sort of the papers and so on, it's just really important to keep yourself up to speed with what's going on in the market of the company, in the sector, the competitors, the regulatory environment, legislation, and so on. So even if that the papers is one thing, but there's lots of other reading and research that you should do around the outside as well.
Which, as Fiona said, it's got to be interesting. You've got to be passionate about it. We've got another question.
Just going to add to the question, I remember my first board meeting for Fight for Sight, which is a medical research charity. I read the board pack. I honestly had no idea what any of it meant. Like, you're reading it thinking, it's a new sector to you don't know, but the second, the third time, the fourth board meeting, there's familiarity there and you can do it. So, I always say whatever the meeting is, you double it for prep time. I didn't know anything about medical eye research. There was a reason why I was a specialist expert brought onto that board. And then I just picked it up. I read it in the news. It was like the newspaper was writing to me. It's amazing. You just see things you don't normally see.
So if you had to summarize the biggest positive of being a non-executive on a board rather than an executive, what would you say it is?
I know mine because I spout it quite regularly. This sounds really bad, but I used to, when I was an executive, you feel this sort of downward pressure, and you feel you're constantly having to justify yourself. And you're saying the same thing. I say the same thing now as I did when I was executive. I am only me, and I've just used common sense. But but actually the response is completely different. It's fantastic. People actually listen to you and respond, and it's a really interesting dynamic. So it's hugely valuable being valued. And actually, I think it's the point that Tanya made, which I love, is this connections bit. You need to go and talk to you over there, and that's a really good idea that could work here. It's not competitive. It's not sort of, but it's actually pulling the threads. It's really exciting when you see things sort of magic happening just by introducing people to different people, and because if you're in the sort of same sector or in the same areas that you're working, there are so many threads you can pull. I love introducing people to other people because it does make magic happen. Any, go on.
Yep, do you want to go for it? Oh, too polite. No, I completely resonate with that. I also, I love contributing to the companies. I love thinking about, the strategy, about problem solving, about coming up with novel ways of doing things. Again, to your point as well, there's the opportunity that you have to think about. There's the risk side that you have to think about as well. So it's intellectually, I think it's really interesting, and I love, as you say, the connections that you make through it, which is so important. So completely resonate.
Yeah, what I find is because you're away from the firefighting, the daily firefighting that you have in an executive role, and it links a little with what you just said, Nicola, you can really take a step back and look at things more objectively and in a more detached manner, because our role, as Nicola was saying, is also to look more broadly, to look at the market, to help the executive who's caught up in that firefighting every day, to look more broadly, to help them with the strategy. So that is something that it was challenging at the beginning, but I love it now to sort of give that broader view. And the other aspect is I love learning from my colleagues as well. If a board is brought together properly, it should be diverse. And then everybody on the board comes from a different angle. You give your view from your point of expertise, and then you get a different view from all of the others. And I mean, I think Thrive Renewables is a very good example of a diverse board, not just in terms of the, men, women, ethnic background, age, but really specialisms that, experience would come from. And, as much as I give, I take in learning from the board discussions.
Yeah, I'm going to answer the question, then I'm going to ask Paolo a question related to it, if that's okay. Sure. I chose Fight for Sight because my great aunt was blind and my father has the same genetic condition. So I chose it for a passionate reason, but I also chose it strategically for who I was sitting next to and I might learn something from. So the chairman of Rathbones Bank, didn't know him, the CEO of Credit Suisse, global, and clinical eye surgeons, being on a board with all these different people. It's so enriching and it widens your network. And you don't know what you know until you go elsewhere. So for me, it's so different than being an executive. I think you've given that helicopter perspective. But I was interested in your comment about NEDs and executives. Boards only work if there's trust between the executive and the non-executive director, and they're open about their problems. So choosing a board where you sense there's a nice feeling. You talked about go-to-market and growth boards. They're actually quite different. They're like private equity boards, aren't they? They often have chairs that are solving problems. So how does it work with you as an executive working with your NEDs? Because you've done both, just on that trust and sharing, because the dynamics of those people have got to be right for you.
Yes, and I think that's probably quite interesting to look at it from both perspectives. To me, coming back to an executive role, it's a choice. So I don't feel really the oppression. Actually, I'm liberated by knowing what it means to be also on the other side. So I'm doing it the way I think it should be done, and less negotiation, more openness. And so it works quite well. I think both dimensions are exciting. I think on the non-executive role, you have an opportunity to cover many different fields. I learned about hydrogen that I didn't know anything about it. and you really understand the industry from a different perspective, and that's enriching. On an executive role, depending on why you do it, I think you also enrich yourself on a dimension of leadership, how you get people to follow a strategy, how you get a system to work. I think for me, my personal journey has been about learning, and it continues to be about that. I enjoy learning new things. It depends on the dimension. So I think you really need to think about what you enjoy doing. Both are very good. You can probably do both in your life. I think stay close to what you enjoy doing and what you're best at, and I think you'll find your way. That's what I think. What I would say.
So I think we've talked a lot about the positives, which is great, but I think there's also a sort of nervousness of going to a board, of there is a responsibility there. How do you know, are there any red flags you'd look out for when you're looking to move to a board or join a board? Is there any good questions we can ask in the process to kind of make sure we don't end up on maybe a not so productive board that's actually a poor experience early on?
You want to? I as well, but okay. I think chemistry is very important. I mean, I've been to interviews where they went quite well, but at the end I said, actually, it's not a good fit for me. It just doesn't feel right. And so if that gut feeling, that little voice is telling you that, then the voice is probably right. And I found doing your due diligence, right, before the interview, you really need to look at the annual reports, go online, see what the press around the company is, what the ups and downs of the last few years are. Yeah, I think you really need to do your due diligence. It's a way of preparing for the interview as well, but it will be what shows any red flags that there are. Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably just going to repeat what's already been said, but I mean, my mantra now is it really interesting and do I like the people? And that actually leaves an awful lot that you can go after. But actually, you've got to really care about the business. You've got to really feel it in your bones in the same way as you do if you're working for an organisation. You've got to feel passionate about it. And actually, the board will go through tough times as well as good times, and so you've got to be able to work with these people on an ongoing basis and sort of enjoy their company. And I think Paolo's point around learning, I mean, all of us were nodding violently. I mean, the learning bit is the most fulfilling piece. So we're constantly learning and building off that.
In terms of, we talked about understanding your board value add and selling yourself as a non-exec trustee governor rather than exec. It's the same in the interview, because you should be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And if you do it all sell me, sell, rather than say, talk to me about your problems. How are you dealing with this in the water sector? I see there's an issue. How's that come up in your boardroom? All of that's representing yourself as a NED. And it's through those types of discussions you can get that fit. This doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah, I think Fiona's absolutely right. I mean, asking them questions around their risks, their challenges, that is also a really good indicator for where the company is going. I find that's a key question.
And I think the sniff test is that sort of gut fit. You know if it's a good one or a bad one, and as you do in organisations and teams and the rest of it, so follow that. I'm really conscious we've been going for an hour, so I'm going to wrap us up at this point. We've obviously got drinks and one more question. Sorry, all right, we'll do one more question. Go on. Go.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
apologies.
Okay, Jane Reeves from Wheatley Software Solutions. I just wondered if you could explain, please, the scope of the legal responsibility you have as a non-exec director.
Who shall I ask? Scope of the legal responsibility. Do you want? Go on. Well, I think we can all answer it.
You are personally liable for everything that goes on in the organisation, but the law is not out to get you. Companies go insolvent and out of business all of the time. They're only going to get you if you've done something fraudulent. So, for example, trading when you knew you were insolvent, that's called stealing. Raising money from a charity that you know is about to go bust, that isn't doing a disservice to the donors. So that's what the law's out there to get for you. They're not out to get you, so it is responsible. You do need to make sure you're just aware of those things, and it's not complicated. That's why I always, I've been in the financial services industry, but I'm not a trained accountant. I would make sure one of the other board members was independent as a trained accountant. I loved the startup board, which was close to insolvency all the time, because the chair was an insolvency lawyer. But if I cover that covered, then it's those types of things. So and those people who are worried about it, give us a call. We'll chat you through it. But I think the most important thing is that you trust the people around the table, that you're all doing it for the right reasons, and not to overthink it. Because if you overthink it, then all the people who don't think of it, who love the status of it, they'll be running the country. I probably shouldn't say that in a current situation we're in, but you know what I mean. It's about stepping up, and don't overthink it. If you overthink, then we won't get change.
Thank you. Any more questions? We'll take them upstairs. So, I'm going to wrap it up now, but we'll please come and find any of us and ask questions. Thank you so much to all of you. I think fantastic panel, really interesting perspectives, lots of different things to think about. Hopefully you've come away from tonight going, actually, I can do it. It's different. There are different routes, there are different opportunities, but I can do it. And I think, please do. You know what they all look like now. Go and talk to them upstairs. And that's the thing to remember. Everybody's human. Everybody's only trying to do their best job that they can. And as long as you're doing that, then actually you can do all sorts of things. So, we're all proof of that, I think. Just trying our bestest. Please, Karen will tell me off if I don't do it. So please use the feedback code. This is all about for you. So if there's particular things you want to come through from WUN, or feedback on this event itself, or anything like that, we really want to hear from you so we can keep developing the network for our members. So thank you very much. Thank you for the brilliant panel. Please come and join us upstairs and keep asking questions. Lovely to see you. Thank you.